the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Friday, November 21st, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host, along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. You are, folks, are about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, information, and analysis of the news behind the news. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D format. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, a fog of disinformation, misinformation, misdirection, and there is so much out there to bring you the important information that propels the news. For new listeners, thanks for checking in with us. We got a lot of new emails today, actually several from South America and Latin America, and 2 from Europe, several from Canada, and many from across the United States. For those new to the program, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base on the Internet, of course, is hagmanandhagmann.com. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the hagmanandhagmannreport.com. To each and every one of you, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your belief and continued trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. Folks, I've got to tell you, before bringing Joe into the studio here, we're onto the show, we've gotten so much positive emails about our guest for this hour. Our guest for this hour is Pastor James David Manning, the ever so popular host of the Manning Report. He is the founder and director of Otla.org, and of course, the Manning Report and Otla.org is hard linked right off of our website, which is hagmanandhagmann.com. Joe, welcome to the studio today, and thanks for coming early and helping out a lot. You did a lot of things. Appreciate that.
Yeah, here, it doesn't matter how long when we start. It seems like the earlier we get here, the faster time goes. So, but I just want to say, Pastor Manning, it's a pleasure to have you on. We've been listening to you for a long time, and even when we were working in New York City as private investigators, traveling back and forth from Erie to New York City, we would check your videos every morning before we went out and did our investigation. So we've been fans for a long time. Before we had a show.
Next time you're in New York, you got to stop by the church and by our studio as well. So you absolutely, positively got to do that. Can't come to New York ever again without being my guest.
Well, you know, we testified we testified at a hearing just down the street from where you were at probably 2 years ago. It was by the Apollo
right
Theater.
Next to the Apollo Theater.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we did. So we weren't too far from you. I know.
That's right.
Yeah, and I have to tell you this, Pastor, and I know this is kind of off topic, but I think you'll get a kick out of this, as will our audience. We don't have, for example, when we surveillances. When we did surveillances, of course, it's because we were taking it from a van. Of course, there was no audio, or there is no audio to the video surveillance. But when we testified in the court recently within the 5 boroughs, and actually in a civil matter, the video was playing on the screen in front of the judge and the jury, and we had the audio, and it just so happened that the audio that we were listening to, we had half of your program and the other half of Rick Wiles' program, and I got to tell you, the judge says finally, after I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, says please turn the audio down. But so at least 4 or 5 minutes of your report came through, so it was kind of funny.
Very good. I'm honored to know I participated in that. Our report was in that process.
Exactly. Well, and I think the judge was kind of entranced by what you were saying, because it took him that long to say kill the audio. Normally, it's quiet, but so it was kind of humorous, I thought. But we certainly don't want to waste your time here talking about trivial matters, Pastor. We've this country appears to be in it's in very bad shape. And folks, if you don't know who Pastor Manning is, you're living under a rock. Pastor Manning is perhaps one of the most, he's at the tip of the spear in terms of providing information. He has the Manning Report, which airs live weekdays, 12 to 3 p.m. Pacific, or the real time, as I like to say, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so...
and he was also one of the very few people who decided to get in and figure it was important about the eligibility issue, and there were so few people who would even recognize that as an issue, let alone talk about it in a way that wasn't marginalizing people. Pastor Manning was there right from the beginning.
Exactly.
I hope we get an opportunity to talk about that eligibility issue at some point tonight, because it's still a very critical issue for America, and I am convinced that America can never reestablish herself as the great republic she once was prior to Obama without this eligibility issue being fully, completely examined and all of the American people getting an opportunity to see it under the right kind of proceedings, such as a court proceedings with subpoenas and other kinds of instruments of law that will help the American people be able to clearly see what a grave mistake we've made. And it's festering now. So I pray that at some point in time that will happen in America, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that it does.
Well, we can springboard this program off of this because I think this is so important. Back in 2008, you, Pastor, and others were yelling, were screaming, were saying, look, we have an constitutionally ineligible man running for office. And had we done something as a nation, the leadership done something, had been willing to do something, we would not be in the nightmare that we're in right now. Wouldn't you say that's pretty accurate?
Well, I would say absolutely yes to that, but and in addition to that, what we saw last night with Obama's executive action is who he truly is and always was. The media tried to portray him and paint him and campaign him as one of the Beach Boys or the boy next door. This man is a vile, vicious maniac, and we have turned over the power of the free world to him. But what we saw last night was just a tip of the iceberg of the character of who he truly is. And you're right. In 2008, I started yelling back as early as 2007 in December of that year that America needs to be very much aware of who this person was. And I got to tell you, Doug and Joe, I never thought in my wildest estimation that America would elect this man. I mean, I just never thought that they would until I began to see the crowds of Americans by the some people, when you talk about numbers, you say by the gross. The crowds of numbers by the gross of hundreds of thousands of people coming to his events in Philadelphia, even in Germany, and wherever he went, from South Carolina across this nation. I mean, literally hundreds of thousands of people crowded into stadiums to swoon over this man. And I just never thought that they would do it until I saw that happening. And I guess that's when the powers that be, including people like George Bush, George Tenet, and Hillary and Bill Clinton and others recognized that this man has a power that they were afraid to touch. He is wholly and completely ineligible. He was not born in America. And the thing is so convoluted. Even the man that he says is his father, who he wrote this book about, or isn't even his father. But I'm praying that at some point there will be a full investigation, unfettered by the powers that be and by the media that has kept the American people away from the truth about this man. And the only way we can actually salvage this nation, I've already said that, I'll say it again, is that we find out exactly who this man is and what has happened to our nation if we're going to get it back again.
And I'm 100% with you there. Now, you actually went so far to conduct a citizens grand jury trial, the Columbia Obama trial. Now, if people are not familiar with that, perhaps they should be. Do you want to just make mention of that and what became of that?
Back in November, I think it was 2009. I'm sure that it was. I was visited by the CIA, and I want to make it clear it was the CIA, not Homeland Security. Two of them came to our church door, and I was upstairs in my study area. It was in the evening. I think I just finished the Manning report. Pardon me. And I was told that the CIA was outside wanting to talk with me. They came in, and they had two local police officers from the local precinct here, a sergeant and another community affairs officer with them. I later learned that our entire church was flanked by New York City police officers and other plainclothes officers that evening in November, and it was dark outside. Anyway, they were asking me questions about things I had said about Obama, and they said they were there to determine whether or not I was a threat to his life in any possible way. And so they asked me a couple of questions, and I asked if they had planned to arrest me. They said no, and I told them when I didn't want to talk with them unless I had a lawyer present. At that point, they kind of just summed everything up and walked out my study. But the next day, Doug, I got a call from an anonymous person who said that they know of my visit. I was visited last night. They actually talked to me about what's in my study, the books and the character of my study, the things that were said. And then they said to me, the person on the line said to me, that if you really want to know who Obama is, and you need to investigate his non-attendance at Columbia University, the years that he said that he did attend there, and where he was during those years, and how Columbia University has been complicit in putting together a program that allowed him to say he graduated from there but never attended. Well, when I heard that, and I was convinced that the person who was explaining all of this information to me absolutely, positively did know about me and did know what either Homeland Security, either what Homeland Security or what the CIA had on me as information. But this person obviously wanted to assist me because they wanted someone to expose Obama. And so I was given this information. I began to pursue an investigation into Obama's alleged attendance at Columbia University. And to shorten this up a bit, I conducted a trial in May. I think it was 7 months later. I put on a trial here at our church that lasted for 7 days, where a grand jury was formed. First of all, in our church, according to the New York State Grand Jury Code, we called 24 people to come to our church who wanted to participate in the grand jury to see whether or not there should be an indictment against Obama and Columbia University for sedition, for treason, and for other practices as well, including presenting a false instrument, mail fraud, etc. We got 24 people to actually vote yes. All 24 people voted yes, there should be an indictment. I think that took place in April of 2010. And in May of 2010, we conducted a trial, and 17 counts was brought against both him and Columbia University. I mailed out subpoenas that we established under our citizens' grand jury, using fully the auspices of the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, which gives the people the right to pursue or to conduct trials in the event that the government, federal government, and the state fails. Then the people have every right to exercise those rights. And so I mailed out subpoenas to several people. Their names now, kind of all the key people, key players, including the head of the CIA at the time, Columbia University, Lee Bollinger was, and others. I think Eric Holder. I subpoenaed a large number of people to come and participate in the trial as witnesses under the threat of contempt of court if they did not come. Well, they didn't show up. Anyway, he was found guilty after 7 days on all 17 counts, including Columbia University. So that's a very long explanation to an answer, a question you just asked me regarding the trial. But that's how it all happened.
Well, and I think it's important background, ladies and gentlemen. We do have the power, as just spoken about by Pastor Manning, we have the power to convene this type of legal. I mean, we've got the legal recourse as citizens. We don't have to be held or subjugated by the legal process. We can do exactly what Pastor Manning did. Now he did a marvelous job, and Pastor, we followed that trial and of course reported on it, and you had posted. But in fact, folks, you can go to otla.org, and in the menu there, you can go directly to the Columbia trial. There is a subheading and view the different entries going back to September of 2010. So, but we think it's extremely important that people understand that this is not some sort of foo-foo thing. This is actually constitutionally supported. So, and you did a fantastic job. But Pastor, so you've got really a guilty verdict. To me, and not to make less or make it sound less, but what can we do with the guilty verdict that your trial came up with? Is there anything possible if no one wants to play? Is there anything that we can do with this?
Well, the Constitution, the 10th Amendment, gives us the authority to hold the trial. I did not have the authority to arrest or to imprison, and so we turned our findings over to the state attorney general, to the federal attorney general, to every member of Congress, to the Speaker of the House, and the majority leader in the Senate. Information was sent to them via certified mail of our findings and transcripts of the trial, so they could see the evidence which we presented, which was not frivolous. It was actually documented evidence, including evidence that had been entered by from information taken from the New York Times. And from Fox News, evidence that had been entered by people who had, like Wayne Allen Root, who had attended Columbia University at the same year that Obama alleged to have attended there and have alleged to have graduated. All of this was documented evidence that was irrefutable, that was in the transcript that was submitted to all members of Congress, to the Attorney Generals of state of New York, and the other thing is I would want to point out to help people understand the power, the beautiful power of the Constitution and its amendments, which we wish to protect, and we will not have them if we continue to allow Obama to remain in office, was that while we were conducting that trial for 7 days, police officers, several police cars, and other unmarked cars sat outside of our church watching people come and go while the trial was in process. And I just want to inform the American people, had we been doing anything that was considered illegal or that would have been did not have the authority to do as citizens, I would have been arrested and dragged out of the church and dragged out of the courtroom and everybody else. They did not come into the courtroom, nor did they arrest us, nor did they attempt to do so, because they knew we were fully protected by the Constitution and what we're doing. So I just want people to know that we have that kind of power, and the Constitution is such a beautiful instrument. I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes, people do have to understand that. But there's two components to that, Pastor. I believe the one, of course, is the surveillance of the activities and the proceedings by NYPD and I'm certain other federal agencies. But then there's that overt type of harassment, that attempt at intimidation. Even though you're not doing anything wrong, to me, it's like the mentality of someone going down the road at the speed limit, and even if you're going at the speed limit, you see a police car sitting in the weeds somewhere. Right.
Your first instinct is to step on the brake, right?
Right.
So that's where we're at today with this mentality. But but you've done such great work with this, and people should realize that. What you've done is really, to me, groundbreaking. I mean, it's not unprecedented, but certainly in history, but it's groundbreaking. But in the long and short of this, though, it's my understanding that your findings, or at least the suggestion of what you've found based on the totality of evidence, is that what we've got in the White House is and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Just correct me if I'm incorrect or a little off. But we've got a CIA kind of plant, a Manchurian candidate in the White House. Is that kind of?
There's no doubt about that. One of the things that we were able to uncover in our investigation of Obama and that trial was that he had attended a small college, Occidental College in Los Angeles, after graduating from that very prestigious high school out in Honolulu. He spent 2 years there, and because he was then recruited from Occidental by the CIA to help in the transfer of arms and the opportunity to build a relationship between America and the Afghanistan freedom fighters, because the Soviet Union at the time had just invaded Afghanistan back in 1978-79. And while we did not put troops on the ground to support the Afghanistan freedom fighters, the CIA did go in, and Obama had spent 7 years in Indonesia, in Jakarta. He had a Muslim cadence. He understood the smells of the food. He understood Islam. He grew up. His formative years were spent under Islamic teaching and madrasas. And he was a perfect candidate to be recruited by the CIA to be a go-between man for the CIA to help supply the what was then called the Afghan freedom fighters that morphed into what we now refer to as the Taliban. So he was there for 2 years, and his cover when he left Occidental was that he was attending Columbia University, which took him away from anybody that would have known him in Occidental, placed him in New York City where there was no contact. And actually what he was really doing, he was operating as a CIA operative in Afghanistan for those 2 years. So, he is CIA. There's absolutely no doubt about that in terms of a part of what his background is all about.
Gotcha. And our findings are very, very similar. I mean, we've done so much research on his background, and there's so many holes and so much that has yet to come out. Before we leave this topic, the more I look at this, and Joe and I were talking about this earlier today, it seems that really everyone in power, or those wielding the highest levels of power, whether it's Boehner or even the previous president, George W. Bush, and certainly his father, George H.W. Bush, they've all got to be aware of Obama, his background, and his lack of constitutional eligibility, and therefore, facilitators and collusion is here. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, absolutely, 100%. If I can be 110%, yes, in terms of agreement. And what I want to say, Doug, regarding that, what I think America does not realize, or what the people who do know and who are complicit, who have, listen, you're an investigator, at least you have investigated the information about Obama. I did some investigation. If you and I know what we know, you know that the agencies that do this kind of work and know a whole lot more. My concern, however, is that spiritually and also politically to some degree, I am convinced that if all of these people, including the media, are covering up the information that they're covering up, and they all know each other, are complicit in covering up this information, we can never put together a government post-Obama where people will begin to trust one another. Because, if I know that you know something and you didn't act on it in a responsible way, you acted in a criminal way, and I acted in a separate criminal way, we can never trust each other. So our nation would have to be fully purged of an entire generation of politicians in order for us to go forward. Sean Hannity called for a very special meeting during the midst of the campaign and said he was going to hold on a Sunday night 9 o'clock session where he was going to reveal information about Obama. And he had gotten into a place where he was ready to leave Fox News to present this information because he had gotten some tapes about Obama and about his wife, Michelle, who I refer to as the fist bumper. And he came on that night and talked about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I mean, and Sean Hannity, Fox News, they're all sitting on this information that I was able to obtain as well. So my concern is that anyone who thinks that we can move on in our government as a nation with all of these people being co-conspirators in this hijacking of our nation, I think it's impossible to do. Until we clean the house, we're not going to be able to have a republic or a nation that we can. And that's why Obama gets up and does and says the things that he does and says, because he knows they're all complicit, and he knows that not one person is going to open their mouth against him that's presently in power.
Boy, it's very accurate. Go ahead, Joe.
We've seen how long it's taken the brainwashing and conditioning of the current, liberal mindset that really leaves a person spiritually and mentally hollow and ignorant took to set in. How can we do this in a way where we would not have to condition these people, where we could bridge the gap of them coming to the understanding of the true nature of things and what their true agenda is versus what is good versus evil ultimately?
Well, that's the $64 trillion question that people who have been following this matter for some time, how do we do that? I don't have the perfect answer, but there are a couple of things I think that will be places where we need to start. Number one, we need to return to the faith of our fathers and back to our Christian values again, because the way Obama was able to slither in as the snake that he is, a large part of that was racism and racist propaganda and threats against middle America if they opposed him or if they talked about the truth about him. Because there are millions upon millions upon millions of Americans who know what you have done, who've heard what you have said, have read your investigative reports. But the media has been so adept at calling people racist and then demoralizing them spiritually, and then we don't have the leadership of the pastors in the church. That's one of the things that would have to be overcome. And actually, the example would be, forget about for right now trying to expose these people in Congress, Hillary Clinton and the heads of the Democrat Party, Republican Party, and all these politicians, the George Soroses of the world. Forget about them for the moment. We're not going to exempt them. But what we need to do is turn internally to look at ourselves and discover why is it they will allow this to happen to us, and what is it that we're afraid of? Why aren't we ready to take this nation back from the people that have threatened us with racism and with all kinds of other things that they've said and cowed us into a corner? And then the thing number two would be that we need a victory. Since Obama's been in office, there's been no victory. I mean, this business of the Republicans, pardon me, taking both the House and the Senate Tuesday, a week ago, is laughable. And that's no victory. And I think Obama has demonstrated. In fact, he said on the night or the morning thereafter, I'm not sure which now, that, oh, yeah, I hear y'all, I hear your vote, but also hear the 2/3 of Americans who didn't even bother to vote. So you have no mandate, and you really don't have a victory. And the next day later, stated, okay, well, all right, I don't have either house now. I'll just take executive action to do what I want to do. We need a victory. Mitt Romney was certainly no candidate to be put up against Obama, but he lost. He's affected Obamacare. and the courts has to sustain it. Judge Roberts sustained it. I guess George Bush called him and told him to sustain Obamacare. We need a victory. We need a victory. We need something that will resonate on the Americans' spiritual psyche, that we are victorious. And I think that victory ought to be against the media. We need to pick on somebody who we can defeat, and once we defeat them, then we can move on to persons in the Congress and in the Supreme Court. But that's the only way we're going to get to him. It's pointless even trying to take him down. I talk about Obama all the time. I call him the son of Satan, which he is. But I recognize that there is no vote that's going to take him down right now. We need to take down the pawns around him, and then when he's left standing alone, we need to do our ditty on him.
And that's a good strategy, actually, looking at this, because go ahead, Joe.
And I can jump in. You said something there, the pawns around him. How much power or influence do you think we see coming through is Obama's versus how much is, we as speechwriters, we know he has people who write the laws. How much of his legalism or I guess you'd say ideology gets into these laws into the public as part of policy, do you think?
I think he has speechwriters. His press secretaries, he's burned through a couple of those. He's burned through a couple of White House chief of staffs, which is probably the second most powerful position in the American government, rather than the vice president or the Speaker of the House. But I think most of it is his idea. I think most of it, the direction that he is taking America, is his idea. And I think his speechwriters understand enough about what he wants to accomplish to be able to write speeches that express his ideas without him having to sit down and write every word. But I think he has plans of his own. And I think he's tremendously insidious. Wicked people, I think, and that's why we need to go back spiritual. Wicked people are uninhibited in their thought patterns. For instance, good people, noble people, honest men and women do not realize that there are certain bridges they will not cross. There are certain things that they will not do, because they have a conscience, they have a concern for their fellow man, and so they are inhibited or prohibited from doing certain kinds of things. Obama has no such compunctions. There's no limit to the amount of evil that he does. So therefore, he's not limited in the things that he thinks about doing and how to get them done. And then he's talented enough to be able to put them in language that many people that are communists, that are socialists, that are leftists, that are anti-American, that are haters, he can put it in their language and they understand it. And that's exactly how he's been operating since he first stepped on the stage.
Very good observation. Yes, indeed. Wow. We so many things here in so many directions. I just want to point out to ladies and gentlemen and Pastor Manning, tomorrow is going to mark the 51st anniversary of the assassination of JFK in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. That was obviously November 22nd, 1963. And as we're still in that 50th year anniversary until tomorrow when it becomes 51, the 51st anniversary. Now, I look at that as a moment when our government was decapitated. Now I see that, at least in my view, and based on what my intelligence sources have been telling me, we have become I'm talking about the country, have become the potential victims in that car turning the corner onto Elm Street there at Dealey Plaza. 50 years ago, they decapitated the country. Now they are coming after us. At least that's how I see it anyway, and others as well. But the question I have for you, Pastor, and no one wants, believe me, no one, and just let me make this perfectly clear, no one wants to see anything happen to anyone, including Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro. But do you feel that the protection around him is lessening? In other words, do you feel, Pastor, that...
Yeah. With the murmurings of also him being, potentially assassinated. I saw that in many rumors across websites for months and almost years.
Yeah.
That being spread around.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, let me qualify my answer by saying I, 5 years ago, put up a fervent prayer that no one would assassinate Obama. Now, I'm not saying my prayer has been answered. The reason why I prayed that prayer is because he would go from being right now a hero to a martyr that will live forever, and his principles will live forever if he is killed. So my prayer is let him live so we can see him in an orange jumpsuit, walked out of the White House off to Guantanamo Bay. I think so. I'm praying that no one does kill him, and I would think that that people like the Chinese government or the Russian government who would maybe have designs to do so may feel the exact same way, that and to kill him. And then the other thing, it would exacerbate the race problem in America, because then they would say, well, you killed the first black president. Well, he's not black, and he's not the first black president, but that would also be another thorn in America going forward. And I think even some of the boys, maybe who would think about doing it, realize if you kill him, you increase his abilities. So I think the Homeland Security probably wish somebody would kill him. They don't seem to be protecting him very well with all the White House fence jumpers getting into the White House. But that would be my prayer. And the other thing I like to say, as we're having this discussion tonight, in the event that you got some untoward ears listening to your broadcast, it is never my intent to do Obama any harm. And any discussion about it, I want to say right away, I would never lift a finger to physically hurt him or harm him, because I don't want anybody coming to say I threatened to kill the Mac Daddy. So I'm just trying to make that clear tonight.
Yeah, it's abundantly, Pastor. It's abundantly clear. We have this discussion quite frequently, and it's clear that we certainly wish that he is well protected all of the time, because
right.
Yeah, and for that very reason, because martyrdom only leads to an acceleration or an exponential implementation of the agenda and the Obama agenda, which is destined to destroy our country. Now, you had mentioned something earlier too about the race relationships or the race baiting that we see, and I think it's a perfect segue into talking about what we saw last night. Really, the vision of T.D. Hale with an eagle being shot off from the Truman balcony with Obama holding a shotgun. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but regardless, we saw some history being made, at least in our view, that Obama has taken the role of emperor through his executive orders. It's nothing like the previous executive orders or the workings of Bush or Clinton or Reagan with respect to immigration, illegal immigration. What are your thoughts on what we saw last night?
Well, I'm not familiar with that that particular incident, but so I can't speak to that point. But what I do believe, with respect to Obama's executive action privileges, and not only is it certainly not similar to the executive actions taken by Reagan or Bush or Carter or anyone else for that matter, or Clinton, sorry, for that matter, but the attitude with which it has been taken, his executive actions is certainly different. His attitudes are wholly in a sense of impunity and in a sense of un-American as well. And I've contended that Obama's not going to leave office peacefully. I've contended that for quite some time. That he will very possibly situations will arise where the presidency or the Constitution may be suspended for whatever reason. And that we won't see in 2016 the smooth transition. I've contended that for some time. And we've got incidents that are facing us like Ferguson, Missouri right now. And the media is pumping this matter up, Doug and Joe. The media, they want to see a riot, and I think that I know that the White House said that Obama wants to see one because he can, if it's a spontaneous uprising nationwide, then he can declare martial law and then act again with impunity. So I think he definitely wants to see that, or if not, will certainly push for it at some point in time to try to have that take place. And the reason why, Doug and Joe, I say that the media is pushing that because if the media did not want a riot, if they don't get one, they're going to be very disappointed. They're trying everything that they can to make sure one happens. If they didn't want one, they would call me up and talk to me. And let my voice be heard among all the other voices. They'll interview the new Black Panther Party. They'll interview people who are outright racist, black racists, if you will, hate-filled. They give the attorneys, they give people on the street the opportunity to.
I don't know if we. His call dropped. We will call him right back.
Wow.
Not sure what happened.
Isn't that interesting?
Quiet drop.
That was just a quiet drop indeed.
Hello.
Oh.
Yeah, Pastor Manning. Okay. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, well, I'm back. Well, yeah.
Okay.
But they don't call on voices such as myself because they want voices that will incite a riot. So I'm just a bit hesitant that we're going to see a smooth transition in 2016.
That's interesting you say that. We've many of our detractors will say, "Well, you've constantly said that. You said that about Bush, well, even Clinton, but Bush and so on." And it's always been a smooth transition. It's all we've never had any
problems. Especially since 9/11. Yeah. After that, changed everything. It was uncertain because we're in uncharted waters.
And that's very true, Pastor. I think that your concerns are very well placed. Any event, which leads me to ask you this, and I just can't believe how quickly time is going here. Being respectful of your time, maybe we should just ask this, Pastor. What on your radar? What is keeping you awake at night? I mean, what do you see? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you're very well researched. You're on the tip of the spear with respect to your investigations, your research, your interviews. What do you see taking place here in the near term that bothers you, keeps you awake at night? Take it wherever you want to take it, whether it's Ferguson or something totally different.
That question. I think that what we're going to see is that people are going to say, "I've had enough." I think you're going to hear the Patrick Henrys rise up from every corner, every town in America, and say, "I've had enough." You're pushing this jihadist, sexual, homosexual sodomy agenda down our throats. You have the audacity to tell churches what they can and cannot preach. You're talking about taking away our liberties in the Constitution. You've already taken away our opportunity to earn livings. We're business people, and I've talked to a lot of them who are afraid that they can lose their business. I was talking with a man down in Louisiana a year or so ago who's had a General Motors dealership for several years. His father had it, and he had it, and it's prosperous. But when Obama came with the Cash for Clunkers program, he didn't sign up. And General Motors yanked his lease, put him out of business. And he said, well, he's just thankful they didn't label him a racist. A lot of people are afraid of that. I think that at some point in time, if I know the American people, and I believe that I do, that you're going to see people say, I've just had enough. Either give me liberty or give me death. But I'm not going to live under this tyrannical government anymore. You're bringing Mexicans in. We're paying for their babies and their hospitalization. We're paying for their schooling. They're not even citizens. They're undercutting jobs. Our fathers and elderly don't have enough money to live off of. They have to now go back to working at McDonald's and competing with people who would work for $2 an hour. And at some point, I believe, I'm not sure how soon it's going to happen. In fact, I can pretty much say that once people in America stop believing that the Republican Party somehow or another is going to save them, then Americans are going to rise up, and they're going to drag Obama out of the White House, and they're going to drag other people out of Congress as well. That's what I see, and it's inevitable. It's happened in every major nation since the beginning of time. When you get tyrants in and people are oppressed, they finally, without any organization, rise up, and that's what I see happening.
We do as well. I think we are coming close to a tipping point, and it's coming quicker than a lot of people want to acknowledge that people will rise up. I mean, even if, look at the Revolutionary War. It was, I think, 3% involvement of the colonists. But having said that, I do see this tipping point coming very quickly, and I think it'll be a combination of things. The economy, of course, the assault on the middle class, the illegal immigration, the real, you just look at Obama. You mentioned it yourself. Just the attitude. I'm reaching for trying to think of the word, but to describe his demeanor, it was almost he almost delivered his message with a smirk on his face, and it
was satanic. It was.
Yeah,
it was satanic. I mean, if you go frame by frame, watching him and watching his eyes and his facial language was satanic. I mean, it was very evil. But there's something else, Hope, that I didn't mention in my last statement, and that is this. It appears that they're trying to throw police officer Darren Wilson to the wolves. Now, I think up until the last week or so, it was pretty obvious that the grand jury found no reason on God's earth to indict this police officer for doing his job and stopping that thug, Michael Brown. And there was just no question that was indeed what was going to happen. And it very well may still happen. I think that what they're trying to do is to work a deal out under all the threats that are coming across the media that if they don't indict, there's going to be hell to pay from the black people that they're thinking, well, indict him and let him be cleared in trial. Let a jury so people can sit there and watch it, and we'll get the same results rather than blatantly not indicting him. And if they do that, if they throw that man to the wolves, we're going to see an uprising. We're going to see the intenseness of the fact that white people are going to think we're being kicked out. The Constitution doesn't apply to white people anymore. There's this deference. There's this favoritism. Everybody's got to bend over backwards. Everybody knows that Michael Brown was a thug. Everybody knows that Trayvon Martin was the same thing, and yet our liberties, white folks saying, gets taken away from us, and it just doesn't make any sense. And somebody needs to rise up and stop it. And that's another observation. So we'll see how that pans out. I think they're planning on dropping the bomb the next day or so.
Yeah, our information was actually we would have had it by now, or they were going to. Or are going to release it sometime in the immediate shadow of the Thanksgiving holiday. I do know that they've closed some schools in advance of Thanksgiving earlier in Ferguson than normal. That is. But do you think the events, if for example, and I'm asking you to speculate here, but this is based on reasonable speculation, if there is no indictment. Man, I can just see cities, not just Ferguson, but other cities going up in flames with riots and such. We already know that the feds have already sent well over 100 agents to infiltrate the crowds, and it's my belief that they're stoking the fires. But do you see this going nationwide if there's no bill of indictment?
Yes. In fact, it has already gone nationwide because most people perceive that there's not going to be an indictment, and so therefore all of the talk that you've heard so far and the muscle flexing has already gone forward. Some immediate out in the street looting and burning that can take place. It can take place sporadically, and it can take place in Louisville, Kentucky. It can take place in Atlanta, Georgia. It could take place in Cincinnati, and perhaps not everybody will be prepared for it. But I believe that because Obama wants to see, and I'm not just saying this because somehow or another I've got an insatiable desire to see him and fail, or that I am obsessed with the idea of seeing him. So all of my thoughts are colored by various kinds of negative things about him. But I am convinced if a CIA agent can call me and tell me things that only a CIA agent would have privilege to, I'm convinced that the administration, the long-legged Mac Daddy Obama, Barry Soetoro administration, are deceitful enough to use jihadist-type tactics, stabbings in the street, knockout games, spontaneous, if you will, rioting, shootings in malls where it's unsuspected, shutting down the Christmas season, those kinds of things, rather than the kind of rioting that took place in Los Angeles after the Rodney King verdict. And there are people who have watched what's happening in the Middle East, who are also, I wouldn't say smart enough, but evil enough to do that as well. America is already a powder keg. The question is, when is it that the patriot Americans are going to rise up and put out the fires? Because our government is not going to do it.
Exactly. And Pastor, let me just say this. I'm getting a lot of emails, well over 3 dozen right now, all in support of what you're saying, and thanking you for your stance, your position on everything, and the information you're providing. So within that body of emails I'm getting, I've got like 3 or 4 different they're non sequiturs, I suppose, or questions that are unrelated to one another. People wanting me to ask you, and this, I heard you first explain this with Rick Wiles. You commonly refer to, and I don't want to trivialize our discussion, but I think it's rather interesting because you commonly refer to Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, as the long-legged Mac Daddy. I did not realize that's actually. I mean, that's a very real description. We have a listener out of Kansas wanting to know what the significance of that is, if you don't mind.
I'm not laughing at your question. It is a very real cultural term, and it explains or expresses or awards, I should say, one person with being the most notorious, most famous, most powerful. It is the best picture, best actor, best director of the year for a pimp. That's what it is. It's the long-legged Mac Daddy, and it's broken up into several syllables. One is that a Mac or young men in certain cultural experiences, especially in the African American or Black experience, going back a generation ago and presently, and certainly in rap music. Like to say about their sexual abilities to the call me your daddy. Who's your daddy? I'm your daddy. Call me daddy during the sexual experience. And I pray this doesn't offend anybody that's listening to your program. Call me your daddy. But these are just young boys and young girls in a sexual encounter. However, there are some young men, and not as many as once before, who call themselves Macs. They stop referring to themselves as the iceberg slim term of pimp, and they call themselves Macs. That is to say that they have a slew of women, and generally the women take care of them. They give them money, and from time to time go out and make money for them. People may not necessarily think this is true and may say you've lost credibility in your definition, and I've never used this. But Al Sharpton is a Mac because his use of women and making them available to other men. But the Mac Daddy is a man who is the number one man, and the long-legged Mac Daddy is, years ago they used to have pimp balls, conferences or conventions, annual conventions like the Democrats or like the Republican Party or the NAACP. They have an annual ball, and the pimp of the year is the long-legged Mac Daddy, and that's who Obama is.
Well, okay, that's interesting. And that Kate from Salina, Kansas, hopefully that answers your question. Listening live there with her family, and wanting me to say also very, very impressed and very in support of what you do. Pastor, we only have a few minutes, and I'm just so thankful. We are so thankful for your gift, gracious gift of time, because you're a very busy man. Two questions to wrap this up. The first question is, how can we, the listeners, everyone listening to this broadcast, either live or on archive, how can we best help you advance your work? What can we do for you? How can we be of service to you individually and collectively?
I'm convinced that, first of all, thank you for that, asking the question. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the genuineness and the way you framed it out. I do appreciate that. I am convinced that the best way that I can be helped is for, number one, if people in America that love this nation and love the Word of God would love that more than they love their lives or their reputations or their jobs or their relationship with their children who don't believe, or who, if people would simply return to their love of this nation and understanding it, this the greatest nation ever, and respect it as such, and in doing so, will not be hoodwinked by slicksters and fast-talking politicians who are simply looking for another vote, but they're on the payroll of the powers that be. That would be number one. And number two would be is that as people get to know or they hear or experience me, if I advance an idea or a cause that somehow or another they disagree with, or persons that perhaps have a larger sense of popularity and notoriety than I do, and my advancement of ideas are in opposition to what these other persons have stated, that they would not immediately dismiss me, turn me off, dislike me, stop their prayers and support for me. If they would simply just hang in there to see what the end will be, those two things would help me beyond my wildest dreams.
Fantastic! What a great what a great answer to that question. And folks, you heard him, and you know what? We asked the same thing as well. Pastor, in the waning moments here that we've got, is there anything that we really haven't touched? I mean, we barely even scratched the surface of the surface, but in a minute or so, is there anything that you would like to convey to our audience that we haven't touched on, or that you think is important for people to know today, here, the 21st day of November 2014?
No, I think that your questions have been absolutely great. I mean, I feel very fulfilled, quite frankly. I think it's been a great interview. I don't usually get interviews like this. I don't get questions that solicit for me the opportunity to fully express myself. The other thing is that I don't usually get the time to talk as much as I'm talking now. I do a lot of talking, as you can very well see, and I've been given the privilege to do that with you. So quite frankly, I think that you've done better than a 1,000% job, and I don't know another question that needs to be asked. I mean, we've talked about the major issues, and everything else can kind of filter out from that.
Very good. Pastor, again, thank you so much for your time, giving up your Friday night with your lovely bride and spending it with us. Just a couple of investigators on the air. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir, very much for having you. I'm honored by this opportunity tonight, and I shall never forget it.
God bless, and hopefully you'll come back and visit with us again sometime soon.
God bless you.
Keep
Please invite me to come back, please. Please do so.
Will do. In fact.
God bless
you. All right. God
Good
bless
night
you, sir.
Good night.
Oh, Joe, that was great.
David,
that was fantastic.
A person we've been listening to and paying attention to his message for a long time. Not just messages on a daily basis. I remember being out of town from Syracuse to Route 3 in New Jersey, sitting in some of those hotels we used to stay in, and getting up and we'd go out and work a little bit, and then we'd come back because of some situation arose that the person under the investigation wasn't available or home or preoccupied. We knew by some way we would go back and try to do the reports of other investigations. And Pastor David Manning was somebody who we'd listen to on a regular basis. And we started listening to Pastor Paul Begley also toward the end of our PI stuff. That's when we really started paying attention to the people who were in the alternative media, more so than just what is out there for easy to find.
And I just want to give a great big thank you to author Greg Jackson, who, by the way, will be a guest with Sheila Zielinski tomorrow night for his outreach to Pastor Manning, and also to a guy that I think a lot of. I love. He's a great he's a great motivator. He's a great big teddy bear to me. But that of course is Coach Dave Daubenmire. What a great man! What a great ministry Coach Dave Daubenmire has in both associated with Otla and Pastor Manning.
With that, we'll take at the top of the hour break now on this Friday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, the 21st day of November 2014. Black Friday is a week from today, and some speculate that the grand jury decision could be released from Ferguson early Friday morning to create some kind of shopping/racial tension riot across the country. There's a lot of interesting theories and speculation that comes from this central situation, but we're going to keep praying for the best. And ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Friday, November 21st, 2014. We are going to hit a number of news items or take your calls or both this hour and through the rest of the show.
You know what, Joe? I just got an email from Bob in Guatemala, and I'll just say this. Joe, remember me saying I had a weird, no specific intelligence, but kind of Cleveland, Ohio was on my mind. Remember that?
Yep.
All right, Bob from Guatemala.
And we had, somebody came on and talked about Pittsburgh right after that, one of our guests. I'm not sure if it was Nathan or
I think it was
I believe
Nathan.
It was.
Yeah. Well, Bob from Guatemala just wrote in saying that something appears to be taking place in Cleveland. It's nothing. There's nothing specific. I guess. He writes this. Doug, Joe, blessings tonight. Hawk said something is happening in Cleveland, Ohio now. So maybe this is relative or in relation to a potential verdict in Ferguson or whatever, but I find it very interesting, and thank you, Bob, for writing in on that, and then thank you all for your emails. Donna, thank you very much, and God bless you and others who have sent emails. But so we're going to keep our eye on that, and we'll see what comes of that. But yeah, there's so much to get into.
Something I want to go back. Okay, first, we have a couple pieces of news from the Pope. We talked about the Pope now making an announcement for September of 2015. He will be coming to the United States to be part of some kind of commission that's going on at the United Nations 70-year anniversary celebration, as well as a visit to the White House. The timing of his visit, I guess, is very interesting, especially if I haven't confirmed this yet, the dates. But what's the last blood moon in September of 2015? That's the last of the 4. I think somebody in the chat room was talking about this the other day when we mentioned it, that this was on the heels also of right after the blood moon of the last one was coming. So
I can tell you that exactly here in just one moment here. Let me get to my notes, my file, because this is important. Here we go. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yesterday, the Pope made a few statements.
September 28th, 2015.
Okay, well, he's coming, I think, September 22nd through the 27th is that group meeting. I'm not sure if he's just probably going to be there one day, and then so he'll be coming here right before that. So it's right around the same time, in the same week, you can say. And also, that means the 70th anniversary of the creation of the United Nations also falls in the same week as the 4th and final blood moon of this tetrad of blood moon. So that is very interesting. Something to keep an eye on. And I said that to say this. The Pope made some statements yesterday. Doomsday Pope warns man's greed will destroy the world. Pope Francis warned Thursday that planet Earth would not forgive the abuse of its resources for profit, urging the world's leaders to rein in their greed and help the hungry, or risk a doomsday scenario in which nature would exact revenge. Nature? He says, would it exact revenge?
Very interesting.
But he goes on to say, God always forgives, but the earth does not. Okay? Now, these are important distinctions to make. We'll go into why if we want to go that far. Because we've covered this already. Mother Earth, the UN Declaration for Mother Earth,
right.
The harmony with nature laws. It has to do with the universal health care system and how we take care of ourselves and the control that is going to be implemented as part of this very end times people who are going to be told to worship something other than the Lord or be killed. That is coming upon the earth. But so he makes a distinction that he says the planet Earth would not forgive the abuse of its resources for profit, and saying that it risks a doomsday scenario in which nature would exact revenge. God always forgives, but the earth does not. This is what he said in front of the Second International Conference on Nutrition in Rome, a 3-day meeting aimed at tackling malnutrition on a global scourge which afflicts poor and rich alike. It goes on to say, take care of the earth so it does not respond with destruction, he warned. Representatives from 190 countries at the UN Food Agency's World Health Organization on the Italian capital. He goes on to say, it is painful to see the struggle against hunger and malnutrition hindered by market priorities and the primacy of profit. And I agree with that. That's very true. And it goes on to say, that feed the hungry, save life on the planet, Francis said at the end of his speech. When praised about the work of the FAO and the WHO in getting the delegates to adopt a Rome Declaration of Nutrition and Framework for Action, he called those drawing up rules and technical measures not to lose sight of the hungry man fighting for survival. The declaration focuses on improving to be healthy and eat healthy food and the growing problem of inactive overeaters. But
inactive overeaters, huh? Okay.
Yeah. I had to read that twice before I even read it.
It's interesting because the Pentagon just released a statement or a report saying unhealthy eating habits could become issue of national security.
It is.
Wow.
I showed you the paper where it said the cost of the premium of health care will be depending upon the behaviors of risk that you have in your lifestyle, whether it's cigarette smoking, eating foods that are deemed unhealthy. These will be based, your premiums will be based on this. And also, what's not said in there, which is not needed to be said, is obviously if they're saying, well, you smoke, you eat this kind of food, that kind of food, how do they know? There's obviously some measure of surveillance going on. Are you going to give that information up freely so you pay more? This is
Well, it's much like, for example, if you watch television, you probably have seen the commercial, the Progressive insurance commercial, where they give you this thing to plug into your to plug into your car, and what that does is monitors your activities, your driving activities. How fast you drive, how hard you put the brakes on, and so on. It collects data. And
for a benefit of a lowered premium, if they decide you are, in fact, a safe driver.
Right. And so what we're seeing is this, and I like to say that this is also a conditioning process. You've got people who are looking at this, otherwise reasonable and sensible people saying, well, okay, I drive like my grandmother used to drive. I'm a good driver, so if it'll reduce my insurance premium, why not? What do I have to hide? It's not just that. It is the conditioning process. It is a process, and by the way, look into Progressive Insurance. That's all I'm going to say about that. Do your own research about Progressive, period. But it's a conditioning process to get you to drop your guard as other surveillance that you agree to. Your buying habits through loyalty cards at the grocery store. All of this, your preferences, if you agree, and this is a big thing, folks. We really don't talk about this too much, but when I used to get this. We had Google AdSense on our old website, and there were a couple of times that people emailed us saying, "Oh, I can't believe you have this ad or that ad on your website.
Yeah, because the Google ad would be, want to learn Arabic language. People would be offended by that being on our site. Now understanding that that's a generated ad based on a region, location, or some other preconceived information that is obtained by the Google ad.
It was actually user. In other words, if let's say you're just simply trying to look up, and folks, this applies to you regardless. Okay?
Like history of Muslim religion or Muslim extremism. Then you would get things pertaining, mosques in the area or
keywords.
whatever they have offering sale, whatever is signed up with Google Ads through a website that offers some kind of product or service that would be pertaining to the ethnic group or whatever you were searching. Like
Correct.
if you're searching for dogs, you're going to get dog food ads and flick tea and flea and tick medicine. I couldn't say that.
That's good. What's a fluck? What's a fluck?
Yeah, a flick.
A flick. Yeah. Okay. But it's actually user driven in some cases, and I when you try to explain this to people, and I'm not the brightest bulb in the bunch when it comes to certain things, but when you try to explain this to people, say, well, it's your browsing habits that they are using to design ads for you, and that we look at it when we on our website, it's just a blank space, or it's a space that's based on, for example, what we might be searching at the time, or let's say office desk, or a printer or whatever. You'll get ads about printers, like Joe said. But it's user driven. It's targeted. It's mass targeting. So, folks,
have you ever messed with it? I do this sometimes. Search certain terms just to see, not even with the Google ads per se, but for the people who might be monitoring things like
dynamite,
the black gunpowder, right? Different weird combination things that don't necessarily mean a bad thing or a good thing, but they would stand out. I do this on occasion. Anytime I can think of it, I try to throw a good funny search in there.
Wow, no. No. Now, and moving on and speaking about something that perhaps people might really want to be aware of, if the e-cigarettes, especially the e-cigarettes, that two things: that number one, that plug into your computer to charge, and number two, most generally are made in China. Now, if you have one of those,
what isn't?
Okay, well, that's true. But I just want to alert you to something here. This is something that has been, at first it looked like, this was just isolated, but now it appears that the electronic cigarettes that connect to your computer, they've become the latest vector for the delivery of malicious software. And when you charge, for example, your e-cigarettes over a USB via your computer with a special cable, or you plug it into a USB port, there have been many reports of malicious software. Now, Reddit, the website Reddit, had reported on this. I think it was today or yesterday or here recently, but we've independently confirmed this as well, that malware is located, or malware is being implanted in these. And, of course, it goes to your computer. So the made-in-China e-cigarettes, many of them have malware that's coded within the charger itself. So when you plug it into your computer's USB port, the malware can infect your system, can and does infect your system. Now, security programs like Trend Micro and what's the other ones? The bigger ones will often catch it, but still, there have been reports that many cases of malware have actually infected computers, and in fact, it affected the data of computers. Get this, at the state level, at various state office buildings.
You're speaking gibberish to me now. I mean, okay, an e-cigarette. I'm familiar with what those are, but how do you charge? Why do you charge one? Don't they have refills or something like that?
Well,
or they're a kind that
there's two parts to them. There's the electronic part, which actually ignites, or it's the engine, shall we say, for the refillable halo.
Is there a wall charger like
yes.
You do? Okay.
Well, not a wall charger. Well, in some cases there is, but in most often, there are cigarette lighter chargers. The things you plug in your cigarette lighter. It's like it has got like a USB port on the end of it, and then you can plug it into your car charger or car cigarette lighter thing and charge it that way. But a lot of people charge them by their computers because much like your cell phone or your iPad when you plug it in. But I just want to alert people to the fact that especially the ones that are made in China. I don't know the brands. I don't know those, but they've been reportedly delivering some pretty malicious payloads that have corrupted. And you're not going to hear this on the news. I got an email here earlier today. I've got an email today where actually this actually hit some data of a DMV company in a state not too far from us. So somebody had plugged this in, and all of a sudden things went haywire, and they called in the computer techs, and they traced it to an e-cigarette. So the charging of an e-cigarette, which who would think that malicious malware
on Dateline or e-cigarettes listening to you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I kind of like that. I can't remember if it's a joke or a comedian says this. Is it Dateline where the guy catches the predators of young girls?
To catch a predator.
Yeah.
Or to catch a pedophile. I don't know. Something like
whatever.
That. Yeah, they pose as children being on computer chat rooms, and then there's a real big popular thing for a while that people like watching.
Yeah, and I don't know whether a comedian said this or I don't know where I heard this or read this, but somebody I heard it said, "Well, my goodness, why don't they just move?" I guess my delivery on that wasn't good, but you didn't get that right. I didn't.
Who moved?
I
don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, no. I mean, you have all these predators coming to the house, and the thing is, well, why don't they just move? Then never mind.
Okay, I get it.
It's just it's kind of stupid, but a little levity doesn't hurt anybody. Attempts at levity, yes. What's on your mind, folks? 661-244-9839. 661-244-9839. It's a Friday. It is really kind of a Freedom Friday in terms of topics, but there's a lot of information.
Yeah. I have an important topic I want to hit here. This is from last week. This is from early last week. We did not get a chance to talk about this. IBM's Watson wants to examine your DNA. How much exercise should I get today? How much coffee can I drink on Monday? These are questions you might ask yourself, not really expecting an actual response. But if IBM has its way, its Watson supercomputer will soon be able to supply these answers. IBM's Watson Group today announced an undisclosed investment in Pathway Genomics to create its first cognitive consumer app based on user genetic makeup. So, genomics, geonamics, however it's pronounced, the study of genes. They're using this for a cognitive consumer app based on user genetic makeup. Citing research on genetic medicine, IBM said that bioinformatics market is expected to grow by $12.86 billion by 2020. Few consumers have access to or can benefit from personalized wellness-related recommendations tailored to the individual's needs, which is where IBM and the Pathway Genomics come in. By leveraging the natural language processing and cognitive abilities of Watson, consumers will be able to ask Watson for insights based on their own genes. wearable data, and other wellness like emotional or other wellness information as such as emotional, physical, or social well-being. It goes on to say that the medical industry is on a pathway to fully understanding the genes and their makeup and how they're built, what they're comprised of, and what makes them, respond positively or negatively. And they say that to evaluate millions of pages of healthcare data in seconds, this will not only will be able to do this new mobile app through Watson, but they'll be able to give details about individuals' lifestyles and biomarker data to provide personal recommendations about how to live a healthier life. Now, we hear recommendations, and this sounds nice, and you're going to ask Watson, and they'll give you a good idea as to how to take care of yourself. Do we need a computer to tell us how to take care of ourselves? Have we ever? Why the DNA?
Folks,
why couldn't you input certain behavior? Like, what did you eat today? A banana and a bowl, 1 cup of frosted mini wheats. Why do you have to have this stuff so interconnected to your body? It seems they skip the step.
It's interesting because I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, whether you've seen this commercial on television. One of my secret habits, and I confess, okay, look, I'm about to make a public confession.
Kissing your dog on the lips?
No, she kisses me on the lips, but I'm about to make a public confession here. Yeah, sometimes I watch TV Land just to escape. So criticize, fire away. But anyway, I when I was watching that, it was an episode, a rerun of some, 70s. Oh, it was a rerun of. It really doesn't matter. But anyway, what surprised me is they had a commercial on for Ancestry.com, and many people have used that. And now
we've talked about it.
Oh, okay, yeah, we have. And now they're saying, well, send in your DNA, and we'll trace your lineage back, 1,000 years, tell you what part of Europe or whatever country you came from. And to me,
and
really,
there's another piece of this puzzle that has been recently released, and this is the guidelines for U.S. Army research on involving human volunteers and human anatomical substances, which are DNA. But it's interesting because they're not talking solely about live DNA. They say human anatomical substances include human organs, tissues, cells, or body fluids, including, but not limited to, blood, finger stick, ear stick, hair, nails, teeth, skin, or cells gathered from mouthwashing, nasal or oral swabs, and it goes on from there. And they're done. The study's being done and undertaken so that they can, record the information of your lineage or what kind of identifiable, verifiable genetic makeup you are of. And also, for a much more nefarious person that you've talked about in the past, Dad, that many of our guests talk about, and that is the DNA. What DNA are they looking for? They're going to start this, and vaccines play a big part in this, and the mandatory and both mandatory and voluntary applications of vaccines and vaccine programs play a huge part in this.
I do believe that the DNA and the blood are going to play an important role in the end times in terms of, specifically in the terms of, if you choose to take the mark of the beast, it's going to definitely change your DNA. And that to me, okay, once you change the DNA, then it's over. You've made it. You're committing to the false God, of course. You're committing to Satan, but you're taking the mark. But by doing so, and I think that we as humans have a specific DNA relationship, what do you call that? I don't want to call it harmonics, but our DNA does have a communication with
well,
God.
Steve said the life in the blood.
Right.
Our DNA it has a significance to God, correct? Because He created us, and this is His creation. But I'm going to go back to Daniel and when Nebuchadnezzar, the king Nebuchadnezzar, had a dream that he couldn't remember, and he called in all his astrologers and they say soothsayers and sorcerers, and asked them for the interpretation of the dream, but not only the interpretation of the dream, to show the king his own dream and the interpretation. And nobody in his camp, Nebuchadnezzar's camp, all these people that he regarded as basic sorcery magicians, could not give the dream and its interpretation. So he was about to write a decree to slay all of them. Well, Daniel was part of these captives from Israel that were part of the Babylon, and Daniel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord showed him the dream and the interpretation of the dream. So it goes through, and many of you are familiar with this, but just in case you haven't heard of the story, I'm not going to read it, but the dream was of a statue, and Daniel describes the statue of the head of gold. This was a great image. Brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form was terrible. The image's head was of fine gold. His breast and arms were of silver. His belly and thighs were of brass. The legs were of iron. His feet were part iron and part clay. And it goes, thou sawest till the stone was cut out without hands, and smote the image upon his feet, where the iron and the clay had broken to pieces. Now, it goes on to give the interpretation. It gives the description of Babylon Empire, the government, or form thereof, being the head of gold in his kingdom, Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and then the next kingdom, which would be inferior to Nebuchadnezzar's, would be that of brass, and it goes down to the toes. And as it gets to the toes, and a lot of people interpret it, and I would agree, that when the legs, you get to the statue, the part of the legs, you have the Roman Empire of iron. One is in the one part of the world, the other spread to the other part of the world, where they discovered America. I think these are the two legs. I could be wrong, but in the legs it goes down to part that's iron. It goes down to the feet and to the toes. And it says, as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And where thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of man, but shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And that's where it goes on to say, and in the days of these kings shall God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but shall break into pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So, and the image that was cut without hands that broke the image is God's kingdom.
Right.
So,
yeah.
The interesting part there is Daniel 2:42. The toes and the feet were part iron, part clay. And 43 says that the iron mixed with the clay is the clay trying to mingle themselves together with the seed of men, almost like some kind of genetic mutation, like we saw in the Garden of Eden. There was a fall of man, and then there were giants in those days by way of mingling with.
And this is why we.
Men.
Yeah, Joe, and this is why we bring people on and talk about the DNA, talk about the lineage, talk about the blood, talk about the Nephilim and the giants, the spirits, because in the Bible, this is, we can. I mean, this is so germane to the ultimate agenda of what's taking place that. And it sounds like a lot of science fiction, but it all relates to the DNA of man versus the lineage. We'll say that the Cain lineage, and I use that because, I don't want to go down that road because there's so much there. I mean,
real quick, just to John, in one of the letters to John, it says, thou art of the seed of God, and not of Cain, who was of the seed of the wicked one, the devil. That is one verse that makes a distinction between the two seeds. Okay,
very good. If I can just change gears here a little bit, we had talked yesterday, and we did, of course, today, talking about the executive action by Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, concerning the illegal amnesty for illegal immigrants. Now, people say, well, once again, and then we talked to Pastor Manning about this, and Carter did this, and Reagan did this, and I did the same thing he did. Reagan and Clinton and so on. This is all done several times, 7 times I mentioned yesterday, about the about amnesties. And if you look in history, if you look back in history, well, you can see the 7 instances of amnesty being granted and the results from that. If you look at the left, they talk about, of course, 40% of, essentially 40% of the people here in this country will be allowed to stay. And the percentage, oftentimes, the Marxist will say is the same, or even a little bit less than the predecessors. Well, let me explain. The 40% of a million is a whole lot less than 40% of 10 million, for example, or 30 million. That's the difference. Let me just cite a couple of quotes today from various individuals with respect to this. It's amazing how, the left, the Marxists, they say the president has taken perfectly legal, and not only perfectly legal, but a common sense action on immigration. So here's some real quotes from conservatives today. Joseph Curl from the Washington Times calls it scorched earth rampage. Ben Shapiro, Breitbart, we are watching a madman. Of course, that's in reference to Barack Obama. Hugh Hewitt, talk radio host, in fact, a gentleman who cited our website in one of his books, a cheater and a fraud. Andrew Napolitano, impeachment. Todd Starnes, Fox News emperor, in reference to Obama. Also in references to Obama, Joseph Vadum from the American Spectator calls him Hitler. Rush Limbaugh, the Constitution is going to cease to exist. Now, you got to go pretty, in my view, you got to go pretty far to get Rush Limbaugh to say that the Constitution is going to cease to exist.
I'll start listening when he said that the Constitution never existed since I've been alive. But okay.
Well, this whole thing right now is,
at least it's coming to the understanding.
Well, are we not seeing then, folks, what we've been talking about for the last 2 years? Are we not seeing this not so gradual now, approach to a tipping point where people are going to start saying, not now, not me, this is it, you've crossed the line, and we're going to start doing something about it? I think there is. It amazes me to see our conservative leadership in Washington, at least in the form of Republicans, because Republicans are conservative, okay, socially and politically, or at least that's what they allege to be or supposed to be, if you still adhere to the right-left paradigm. Following the announcement, what do? They board planes and get out of town for the holiday. Look, if I was elected, if I was a senator or a congressman, you think I'd be flying a plane out? No, man, I'd be there rolling up my sleeves and doing everything I could to fight this illegal and seditious and treasonous action. I do believe, folks, this is treasonous and seditious. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just thinking, if you had a job that gave you vacation, I can't see me turning it down unless there's something important I want to get done or needs to get done that's on my that I feel I have to complete before I go. But these people don't get stuff done when they're there. What's the difference? I mean, at this point, has it not been completely obvious to anybody who's has one half of an eye open that it is ceremonial only, and for those purposes specifically? How can the Congress have approval rating of 9% or lower over a period of 5-10 years, meaning 4 different elections of midterms, it makes no sense. They're ceremonial.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, well, what did you mean by that? But no, I get what you're saying. All we have to do is look at it's the same, or two sides of the same coin when you're talking about Republicans and Democrats.
If I can make one more quick point, the legislation that has been signed on or on the eve of holidays usually has been done in secret, and is the legislation that we have come to know as the implementation of the Federal Reserve, NAFTA and GATT, just to be naming a few. They've all been evil in intent and bad for our country.
Well, yes. But let me go back to something that Pastor Manning said, and something that we've been talking about as well before we get to some calls. But everyone is talking about impeachment, or when they talk about actions against Obama, they talk about impeachment. My question is, and I'm just going to open this or lay this question out for the listeners. If you've got somebody that is in the White House that has no constitutional right to be there, that through the workings of the Senate and the House, don't forget back in 2008 that John McCain there was actually a Senate hearing on his eligibility because he was born in Panama, or I believe it was Panama Canal Zone, I believe. But there was no such hearing with respect to Obama. That's by design, of course. But if we are to accept the fact that Obama is in the office illegally, constitutionally ineligible to be there, and I believe he is, and I would challenge anyone listening to this, and I know that we do have some people from Right Wing Watch, or no, let me rephrase that. I do know that we have people who report to the sewer of a website, Right Wing Watch, that they report to them. But my question is, or my challenge to those people who dutifully report to that sewage site, my challenge is, show me the authenticated papers that prove without a shadow of a doubt that Obama, in fact, is eligible to hold the office, constitutionally eligible to hold the office he holds. I don't think you'll find any. Show me the name change from Barry Soetoro to Barack Hussein Obama. There, you won't find any. And this, by the way, goes into the larger agenda that Obama was selected before he was elected, and selected for this very point in time. And this also, and I want to touch base on this as well. Do you find it, ladies and gentlemen, at all interesting or at all curious that, and you won't find any media outlet touching this at all, but if you, what about Loretta Fuddy? What about what about her, the custodian of records, the strange death of Loretta Fuddy in Hawaii? What about Loretta Fuddy? What about her? Why aren't we talking about her death? Why aren't we talking about the fact that one of the finest internet researchers that I've had the pleasure to know, she goes by the internet pseudonym Butter D Zillion, has amassed such an enormous amount of documentation that I at this point, I'm not even sure Loretta Fuddy is dead, or if she's dead, I'm not even sure how she died. Because, just to go back a little bit, Loretta Fuddy was the health official and social worker from the state of Hawaii. She served as the director of the Hawaii Department of Health. Okay, she was put into that position directly before months before Obama released his alleged purported certificate of live birth. Well, December 11th, 2013, she was one of 9 passengers, or one of 9 souls aboard an aircraft that was leaving one of the islands, and they had a soft water landing off of one of the islands in Hawaii, and she was the only fatality. At first, they said that she had drowned, but there was no water in her lungs, and then there was a case that she had a heart attack, AFib. But the bottom line is, through obtaining documentation, Butter D. Zillion did this, and we have the documentation through obtaining all of this documentation and the records, and there is nothing to suggest that any autopsy was done. There's nothing to suggest that any investigation by the NTSB was done, on-site investigation, that is. And all of the records that were obtained by Butter D. Zillion, who we'll have on, I do hope that she'll have time to come on our program to explain all of this information, because there will be a report made, and a pretty large, extensive report made. Here you've got the only person, the gatekeeper of this particular record, the Obama birth certificate, shall we say, being suicided, or not suicided, being murdered, perhaps, or at least dying under suspicious circumstances, or supposedly dying under suspicious circumstances. And by the way, for those who do know what I'm talking about, the video that was shown on the various networks, folks, that video, some of that video was intentionally edited. But the bottom line here is everything that we're seeing is a lie. Loretta Fuddy, as well as others, including but not limited to the governor of Hawaii, Abercrombie, have direct connections to this religious cult called Subud, S-U-B-U-D. Folks, that is key. Listen to me very carefully. People can die over this. This is something that you start prodding into the cult of Subud, and you start digging deep into Subud, of which Loretta Fuddy was known as, what was her name? Deliana. That was her Subud name. D-E-L-I-A-N-A, however you might want to pronounce that. It can be hazardous to your health. But Abercrombie is a member of this based on our investigation. And this cult of Subud goes back into the early 20th century, the establishment, the creation. And this has direct connections to the CIA. Absolutely direct connections to the CIA. And Fuddy was a practitioner of Subud, this spiritual movement, this cult. She was the chairwoman of Subud's USA National Committee from 2006 to 2008. The national office was in Bellevue, Washington. And, of course, on January 26th of 2011, she became the acting director of the Hawaii Department of Health, appointed by Governor Neil Abercrombie. He appointed her permanent director, on March 2nd of 2011. And isn't it interesting that on May 1st, April 31st, May 1st, a little over a month, maybe 2 months at the most, following her appointment, Obama decides to release his purported long-form birth certificate, which, that's a lie. I mean, that whole piece of paper is a lie. But it was Fuddy who oversaw that. It was the gatekeeper of that process. and a member of Sabood. And by the way, Obama's mother had connections to Sabood. Let me tell you something, folks. Sabood, S-U-B-U-D, you will find, is the key, the golden nugget of a number of conspiracies, current conspiracies, and it's part of a CIA type of operation. I say this, that and I've said this in the past, that we're gonna be talking and writing about this, issuing a report on this. We have all of the information, which, by the way, is in many people's hands, not just mine or Joe's, but other people's hands. We're waiting on some different information. So, I mean, if something would happen to one of us, it's not going to matter. The information will still come out. That's just a little bit of an insurance policy. But having said that, Sabood is the key to many things. The spiritual movement, well, it's more like a CIA type of operation than the spiritual movement. Joe? Caught you off
guard. So many buttons around here, and I reach for reaching for a cord that's part of the computer plug-in rather than my mute button on my mic. All right, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to come, gentlemen, to our third and final hour on this Friday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. We want to hear from you, taking your phone calls this hour at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. As soon as I can get control back of my... there we go.
In the interim, I just...
crash.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Let's tomorrow night, folks, we're going to have a great show with Sheila Zielinski.
Okay.
I'll just, while you're recovering from that, Sheila Zielinski tomorrow night, first guest opening up with Greg Jackson, then Michael Boldia, who's the grandson of, well, I'm having a senior moment again. Michael Boldia, the grandson of Dimitri Duduman. All right, and Augusto Perez and Marcus Samuel for the third guest, for the third portion. And so it's going to be just a fantastic show. Sheila, I just want to say publicly thank you, Sheila, for all that you do. You know, the Weekend Report is part of Hagmann and Hagmann. So, I mean, it's just a great addition to what we're doing here. And just an update for next week, Monday, we're going to have Steve Quayle along with David Morgan. David Morgan has a site called Investors hyphen. Yeah. I just lost my notes here. Talking about a computer crash. Well, talking about precious metals. But having said that,
he is his
do you have
place
it there?
is here.
Do you have
silverinvestor.com.
Silverinvestors.com. Okay. So it's going to be Steve Quayle along with David Morgan on Monday, and Tuesday, of course, Sandeo. Thursday, Joe's going to be perhaps late. I'll be taking the first part of Thanksgiving. Invite me into your home if you don't mind. I'm looking for a home. Thanksgiving, maybe I can share dinner with you, share a cup of coffee with you, and then Joel.
Don't forget to say that you're choosing not to attend a particular Thanksgiving. It's not that you don't have one to go to. You're just avoiding that one.
Oh,
so
no. It's not avoiding it, but no. It's we've done our live Thanksgiving shows for a couple of years now, and there are a lot of people who are alone on Thanksgiving and different holidays, and it's great to be able to kind of just sit with you and talk and share things. So Thanksgiving is going to be a good day for that.
I agreed to do the show with talking to my wife yesterday. She said this weekend or next Sunday was going to be her family's holiday. And then when I told her about the show, she said, "Well, it's Thursday," so that's why I'll be late if I am late. But I would much rather be there. Taking the one holiday off, we don't mind taking off to enjoy with family. But hopefully I can be here at the same time. But we're going to go to the phones without any further ado. 775. We're going to go to you first. You're our first call of the night. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 775? All right. How about this? We'll go to 267. 267. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Doug and Joe, God bless you.
God bless you as well.
Hey, this is Eric from Philadelphia. I just want to touch on, I was listening to the question, will Obama finish his term? And, for the last couple of weeks we've been hearing that question, and I was just seeing if there was any way to find any meaning through biblical numbers. So I was just playing around with a few things I just wanted to share with you. I don't know if you came across this information, but in 1840, there's a list of presidents who didn't totally finish their term and were either assassinated or died before doing that. In 1840, President Harrison was elected, but he didn't finish his full term. He died before finishing his full term. So that's 1840. In 1860, Lincoln was elected, and he didn't finish his full term. In 1880, Garfield was elected, and he didn't finish his full term. He also passed away. In 1900, McKinley was elected and didn't finish his full term. So far, these are 4 presidents, 20 years apart, that didn't finish their full term. In 1920, President Harding was elected. He didn't finish his full term. He passed away. In 1940, Roosevelt was elected, and he didn't finish his full term. He passed away. So now we have 6 presidents in the span of 20 years being elected that didn't finish their full term. So what happens in 1960? JFK was elected, and we all know what happened to him. He didn't finish his full term.
51 years ago tomorrow, that's right. 51 years ago tomorrow.
That's right. So now those 7 presidents, the number 7 represents divine perfection. So we know in the Bible that that's what it represents. So 51 years tomorrow, exactly. Now, 51 in the Bible means the coming of the Holy Spirit. And, 50 means the coming of God and the Holy Spirit, and 1 means unity between God the Father and the Holy Spirit. And 51 also means generation. So Masons usually take a number like 51 and add the 5 and the 1 to equal 6. That's usually how they do, their numbering or whatever it is that they do. So, with 6 being, it symbolizes human weakness. So 51 represents the coming of God's Holy Spirit, and I believe that could be represented as God's judgment can be coming as a representation of God's Holy Spirit. His judgment is actually coming, and if you were to add the 5 and a 1, Masons will see that as the number 6, which means man's weakness and the manifestation of sin.
Caller, you're onto something here that I've been contemplating and looking into for a while now, which is, the number 666 is the number of man, and part of this, everybody's looking for whether it be a chip or some kind of mark, which there is a mark, and it will be a physical mark, and if there's not a mark, there'll be those who worship the mark or the image. But what you're talking about is the human nature of man. We're made of a carnal nature, human nature, but have been given a spiritual body inside of us. Now, we either grow in the spiritual sense with God, or we de-evolve down to our animal nature. And as Satan rebelled against the Lord because he thought humans were not worthy of being, something to be revered, even though they were his creation, he has been trying to prove that they are no better than animals, even worse than animals.
Yeah. So when you look at it through, I guess biblical numbers, I guess a pattern and you could actually get some definition to what's going on, because God is a God of order. So Satan always mimics that. If you were to take 1963 when Kennedy was assassinated, subtracted by 2014, it's 51. But if you were to take 1963 and add it by 2014, you get 3977. And if you were to do the same thing with that, add the 3 to the 9 and the 7 to the 7, you get 26. And if you were to add the 2 and the 6, you'll get 8, which means new beginning, new order of creation. I would take that as new world order. So it doesn't contradict itself. Actually, it confirms where the administration is heading, and just the fact of these 7 presidents not finishing their term fully, I think that represents the hand of God being removed, because 6 is also the number of the mark of the end times of the beast, but it represents the very best system of governance that man can produce without God and without the influence of God. So it all makes sense, because the numbers don't lie in a sense. And after Kennedy was assassinated, they took God out the schools, and that's when all of that started spiraling. So it seems to be adding up if you look at it through that way. And it's a very good question. Will he finish his term?
Very interesting.
What this means. Yeah.
It's interesting, and I know people, a lot of people roll their eyes and say, well, come on, you can squeeze numbers and make numbers into anything, but one thing that we can't deny is the Illuminati, the Satanists. Look at the witches' covens, for example. Their emphasis on 13 and their emphasis on certain numbers, the number 3, for example. It's a very real thing. Their use of numbers.
So what I did is I contrasted, I guess, the biblical meaning of numbers contrasted by the Masonic and Luciferian meaning of their numbers, and they confirm it's just basically God's Holy Spirit is coming, and also there's going to be a manifestation of sin. So the way I see it is God is going to supernaturally protect those who he chooses to and who are really taking him seriously, but at the same time we're going to be under judgment, and sin is going to be manifesting and rampantly, and we see that is a hair trigger away. So if you just kind of mess with the numbers, I don't want to get all cross-eyed or get everyone here like, oh, what's this guy talking about? But you just do some basic homework and you go down your own rabbit trail if you want to, and kind of see how these things start popping up like a pop-up book. It just starts screaming at you.
Very good. I want to thank you very much, caller. I think you've given us much to think and talk about. Appreciate your call. And just to add to what this caller was saying is, folks, is look at the symbology in the ceremonies that we've seen. For example, whether it be the Olympic ceremonies, the symbology there, the various symbology with pictures, and even the symbology in movies and television. There's communication through symbolism, and there is, and I've got to tell you this, I was surprised as heck, and this is a personal experience I had, and I've never had this before. I never had this happen before. I met someone here. In fact, I made a phone call to. I needed a repair done, and I've not spoken about this before. I needed a repair done at my home, and I called someone out of what I guess young people today wouldn't know what these are, yellow pages. But I called someone to give me an estimate on something that I needed repaired. And we spoke for a while, and somehow, and I'm not even sure how this happened, but the conversation got involved in current events and things that were taking place. And I got this really kind of weird feeling when I was talking to this individual that he was not on the same side I was on, if you know what I'm talking about. And up until this point, I had not been able to shake his hand. There was an issue there. Well, I had my hands full, and literally had my hands full. Anyway, by the time we ended the conversation, I went to shake his hand, and this is the first time ever. I was met with someone giving me a Masonic handshake. And of course, I did not respond back, but I'll say this: the individual that had every reason to call me back and to do the work that he was supposed to do never called me back because I did not reciprocate. At least that's my belief. Maybe he just lost my number, but I can tell you this: I certainly didn't go after him to take care of with the work I needed done. Having said that, whether it's numerology or whether it's symbology, there are things out there that are taking place that just because we don't understand them or we don't fully comprehend what they mean, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. So, great call as always.
Yeah. And was your blood sugar low when that happened? Or, I'm joking.
Yeah, really.
No. All right, we're going to go to area code 516 next. Thank you for holding. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann report. 516. We hear you.
My God. Hello. Oh my God, Doug and Joe.
Present.
This is Dave from Long Island.
Dave, Long Island. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, God, I thought you guys were angry at me. I really apologize not calling. I apologize not going into the chat. I'm really carrying a cross, being persecuted, lost my job at the Catholic Church. Now, let me just say before this, I'm a Catholic. I'm a Roman Catholic. I don't want to change. I believe in it, and I just don't want to hear it. I'm not in the chat, so I can't see what's on there. But I'm a little nervous right now. I'm not set up for the call, but I'm glad that I could just at least apologize that I haven't called in so long and that I'm still alive. I'm still here on Long Island.
We're holding it against you. Doggone it.
I'm still on Long Island. I was going to joke with you. I didn't know that you were going to pick up, but I was going to say, I just got out of prison, and I'm going to come after you guys. Because remember, Joe, when he was kidding around about the $500?
I'm not,
$500 for turning somebody in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't prepared for it, so I was going to, put on something. But, what you said, like I said, I'm a Catholic, and I don't want to make any judgments on the Pope yet, but some things have been said. Cardinal Burke, he's a Roman Catholic cardinal, and he was just demoted, but there is something that after 5 or 6 years that you get to be something else. So some are thinking that because he said the church is like a ship without a rudder in the wind or something like that. And he made some statement like that. I don't know if you caught that. When I come over, maybe I could explain a little more about that. There's a lot of stuff. So I just wanted to also, I love David Langford. He's a man of God. I love his word. I don't get this in the Catholic Church. I get it from you guys. I'm so glad you guys are still on. I'm going to try to send you something, but I don't know if I could send that much because I might have to make a move. But I know that they listen to me, and I know that they follow me. I've had something where somebody was on my my life is unbelievable. After I got out of the car, I stayed in my car in a Walmart shopping center till the end of December. And the church, they said, you gotta get out of your car and find a place or else you can't work here. So I got
wait a minute. Dave, wait a minute. You were living in your car?
Yeah, I was in my car. I was in my car, living in my car last year.
Was it because of financial problems, or was it because of something else?
It was financial, and plus just to be away from all that I was going through. You know what I mean? Harassment, just what you guys were talking about.
Okay, all right.
They move things in your apartment. They do little things. They try to get you go crazy, but they see that it doesn't work with me. In fact, I just went into another apartment, and I was coming down. I was going to work, and I just came down this hill, and I see a car down there with its lights on, so it's running during the day, or like 9 in the morning. And I see it's there, and I say, it's the only car there. But I'm very aware of everything. And I just, so I'm making a left. As soon as that light was almost turning green, he was on his way down, coming toward me. I made my left. He was right behind me. So I said, hey, just out of notion, I said, hey, there. I pulled over to the right. Then he passed me. Then I got on him. And I stayed on him with my bumper to bumper, 1 foot to 2 feet away from his rear, all the way down till he got on a thing. He went straight, and I made a right onto a highway.
So like normal New York drivers, traffic, bumper to bumper.
No, the license plate. I don't want to give the license plate because I don't want. It was something anyway. It was a very. You could remember this license plate, and I found out that the path that went straight went to a law enforcement agency. So,
well, Dave, why would you be targeted? Let's just go there. Why would you be targeted for that?
All the times that I came on your show and I talked stuff, all the times I talked stuff, I talked some stuff and I went in there, and I do believe that they go after people. They try to, silence you. And plus, I told you I had a little incident. I don't want to get into that, but I think that they know where I'm coming from. That time in 2010 when I made a stupid thing, And let's just put it this way. What I said back then would have been like I would have been in the city of New York, and I had my 4-inch legal buck knife folded in my pants pocket. And when those rookies were getting their picture taken, and that Muslim scum that was coming up to attack him with the axe, if I pulled my knife out and I put it in his back as he was lunging at the cop, I'm sure nothing would have happened to me. But I would have done it. You know what I mean, Doug? But if you said if you said that 4 years ago to somebody, you might get in trouble. If you ever said that, you know what I mean? I don't want to get into the whole thing. But I think that they know that I'm no threat to anybody because I'm pro-life. More pro-life than they could ever be. But
Amen. How's your situation has changed since the Walmart parking lot? Have you found a place to?
Well, I got out of that place. I can't believe it. It was almost like everything was being set up for me. I got into a place. But I got into a place, Joe, and they had kids. They were nice. Everything was going good. He was in corrections. But that's all right. And I'm downstairs in the basement. And all of a sudden, when the pro-life march came on, I had that on television. I could only get it on EWTN, it's a Catholic network that shows the whole pro-life parade. And I remember when I went into the apartment, being that I was with the church, I got a reference, so he knew. And he said something like, I didn't say anything. I said, Dave, keep your mouth shut about everything. And all of a sudden, he just says, I do believe that a woman has the right, freedom of choice. And I was like, I didn't even say hardly anything to it. I can't remember, but it was hardly none. I said, why did he come out with that? So after that, days went on, weeks, I watched the parade. All of a sudden, after that parade came on, things started to change. They must have heard it. It was I was living where they came in the entrance, and their doorway, when they entered their house, my doorway to my living room was right there. So I could hear everybody if they talked in the hall. So I believe that they heard it. And this is how pro-abortionists are, that I walked the line, so I know what I'm talking about, because they threw a pizza box or something out of a window and hit a girl in the eye one time when I was doing that. So I know how vicious that the anti-lifers are. It's unbelievable how vicious they become. Unbelievable. And I witnessed it. What? I'm sorry?
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dave. I just wanted to let you know we got a bunch of other callers.
I got maybe in the future I can call back and I could talk a little more, in the future or something like that.
I'm going to shoot you an email this weekend, okay? Somebody sending me your email info, a mutual friend. So I'll be in touch with you. But you hang in there. It was good to hear from you. And glad to hear your
thank you very much. Thank you very much. God bless everybody, all right? God bless them.
All right, man. You take care.
I just want to make a point of something he said, watching a pro-life rally and somebody of the household comes in and says something, has a remark to make. I've heard about similar situations like this, whether it be pertaining to prayer or worship music or whatever, that the people who they live with who are anti or opposed to the belief have become much more outspoken, much more bold and vehement, especially when they are the ones in the position, say, you have a friend, you're living with a friend, you're not on a lease. When you don't have that legal right, they'll become downright, disrespectful and nasty to you, almost in a way where you're not allowed to do certain things because it's their residence. And that's a whole new area of wickedness we're seeing, which is pretty crazy to think about, and it's just going to get worse. So we got to be on guard. We're going to go to 707 next. We appreciate you on hold. Welcome to the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hi, this is from California.
California.
And I want to talk about the mutation of the DNA.
Oh, please. That's great.
If you eat genetically modified food, that you are what you eat, right?
Maybe.
Well, I had an illness,
and
it kind of threw me into a situation like Job, where I had sores and everything. And the CDC researched it, and they said that me and the other people that went through it were making it up. But the conclusion of it was actually from genetically modified organism food. And so we had sores on our bodies because our skin was crying. Many of us were going to the doctor, and the doctors were saying that our bones were having degeneration. I was only like 45, and my backbones were degenerating, and my rib bone broke. So I went into debt, $30,000, and was on antibiotics for a year, and started working with Oklahoma State U because the CDC was overwhelmed, and they referred us to the university. So the
do you have documentation? Okay, ma'am, do you have documentation?
Yeah, I had a NASA lab tech because OSU didn't have a good enough microscope to do my lab samples, and he said that my hair was blue, and that's not a normal color of hair. He magnified it with his microscope.
You gotta see my great aunt, but I'm sorry. No, not to make light of your situation.
I'm sorry to be a little nervous, but very emotional situation. I watched everybody that had this genetically modified food illness be blamed for it like Job and be exiled from their churches, their community, and lose their jobs, end up living in their cars, psychologists being thrown in mental hospitals, pastors leaving their wives to die in bed, teenagers committing suicide, and the CDC saying that we're imagining it. So I finally gave it to Jesus.
How did you? But
and Jesus told me that nature was the counterpart. So I called my college, California College of Herbal Studies in Forestville, California, and I told them what was happening to me, and they said, try an infectious disease protocol of essential oils. And I was a registered nursing student, and I thought doctors were like our heroes. But anyways, after working with the CDC, they blamed this on us, and turning to the Lord and to natural healing, I drank cinnamon, lemon, oregano, thyme, rosemary, and one more, I can't remember, but it reversed it overnight. It took away all the sores that I had, that I looked like Job for over a year. People were laughing at me and blaming me, and put it in reverse. And so,
okay. I mean, so the long and the short of it is what you're saying is you consume genetically modified food, which caused you to become ill and present, with skin lesions, and of course,
like a canary, the canary in the coal mine. People that were more sensitive were going in first.
But you weren't the only one. There were others around you that had the same problem, and ultimately it got to the CDC. But the bottom line here is you corrected.
Yeah,
it
they
natural.
threw 300.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you must have some sort. You said you've got documentation. What I'd like to see, and we're gonna have to move on. But what I'd like to do is if you don't mind, on our website, there's a contact form, and just I'd like to learn a little bit more about what you went through. So please send us some documentation, or at least some sort of a summary, so we can kind of take a look and be a little bit more, prepared to talk about this, so others can understand too. Because
and then Tom Horn was talking about how they had found a new alien life form, and something about transhumanism, and it all went back to that in Lake Mono in California. And I heard that YouTube video, and that was basically what it all was. And even the NASA lab tech said that that's what was happening, that it was an alien sort of like bacteria or something that was getting in the modified stuff. Everything was. So I'm calling because you were talking earlier about the people researching it were liking it, and they were calling it evolution. But I believe that mixing up the seed of man with other material genetically is a mutation and is an abomination.
Right. And
so the CDC wasn't wanting, this to be acknowledged. And so Kaiser studied it under unexplained dermopathy. And when you label an illness, why would you label it unexplained dermopathy? It's always going to carry that name. So was that a wink that they never wanted it explained?
Interesting.
Okay. I always look at literature, and literature tells you things. It goes to the truth.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what. Really, again, because of the time constraints, we certainly can't go through all of this. So please send me an email. Send it to studio@hagmanhagmann.com with the kind of like a overview of what you went through. We're going to get back with you, and we're going to talk further about this. We're going to move on right now, but God bless you. Thank you so much for the call. Interesting call. Interesting because this does have. There is something to this genetically modified food. I just saw where they made a potato where they just authorized this patented GMO potato, genetically modified potato, that was based on the supposition that cooking the potato and then deep frying it, for example, as a French fry, it creates this compound that supposedly causes cancer. Bottom line is, they don't know. So be careful what you eat. That's to be sure. So anyway, we'll look for your email. Thank you for the call.
I think this is correct. If I remember correctly, this caller is going to be from Columbus because I recognize the area code one number off from us. 614. You're up next. Live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. 614.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Are you in Columbus?
Yes, I am, and I was actually.
We can see you.
You can see me. Well, you know what? I've been running around cleaning with earphones on, and so when I heard him say Columbus, I popped my earphones out. So I am one of the girls that we were next to the front row. We are from the Bible study in New Albany. We gave you a jar of candy.
And we've got that right on the corner of the desk, and I know exactly.
The saltwater.
The caramel.
It is the chocolate caramel sea salt.
Yeah,
that is some of the best stuff I've tasted. I've never heard of it before, but thank you.
And I can recognize you. I can see you by your voice, and God love you. I'm telling you.
Well, thank you, and God bless you. We had the most magnificent weekend, and I talked to all the girls. And we're still absorbing. It was just so amazing. We just really feel like it was so incredible that God allowed this to come to Dublin, Ohio, where we could all actually come to. And it was just like we needed that shot in the arm. And we just know that a lot of things are happening and so forth. But there were two reasons I called.
Sure.
The first one was you were talking about the insurance companies, and they are going to charge you by what you eat.
Yes.
And I know that you must remember a magnificent prophecy teacher named Grant Jeffrey, who passed away a couple years ago.
Yes.
And Grant Jeffrey did the Shadow Government. He did a DVD, and I've got several of them that I actually use for witnessing tools. But on that DVD, and he also had a book called The Shadow Government, but he talks about the smart appliances and how when you put juice or ice cream or anything in your newer appliances, that they're all by satellite, and that they can actually record what you're purchasing and what's going in and out of your fridge.
Yep.
And he also said that that's in other appliances as well. So do you remember when they did cash for clunkers?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the people really rose up because then they wanted to do cash for appliances. I don't know if you remember that. They wanted people to trade in all their old appliances, if you go back and check into that. And they wanted everybody to get smart appliances that were, more energy efficient and so forth. And I think that had a lot to do with it because Grant Jeffrey was really talking about the smart meters on the homes. Just everything. That's just part of the monitoring system. And he was so far ahead of everyone else. He was telling all these things.
Yes.
So I just wanted to tell you that one in case you wanted to check it out. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is when at the last night of the prophecy conference before Russ came on, and then after that, I think it was John, the actual host of the prophecy conference. Was it okay?
Well, Russ. Yes. Okay. Right. Russ Dizar. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Well, we had a gal that moved up in front of us in the front row, and I hope she's listening. She does listen to your show. She told us that's how she found out we had just met her. And she sat in front of us, and she said that she was so glad she got to come, and that she had really been hearing from the Holy Spirit to prepare. And she also told us that her boss's pastor was following a semi-truck through Columbus, Ohio.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Yep, go ahead. Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. Yep.
Okay, the top of it was open, and that the tarp the snaps came loose, and the tarp was lifting up and blowing up and down, and the truck driver pulled over, and she said that the pastor pulled over and offered his assistance. He knew it was going to be quite a job to get all those bungees and so forth attached. And when he climbed up on the side of the truck and started helping, there were large signs inside the semi that were like big freeway signs, and they said martial law. And we were also in shock. And we were also in shock that, and we were just like, oh my Lord, this is unbelievable. But none of us got her name. So I was kind of hoping if she would be listening at some point and she even goes back and and listens on her computer, that she would contact you so you guys could talk to her. But
we actually did. Okay, I actually talked to her at the conference, and she related that story to me directly, and we spoke in detail about this.
Amazing.
So yeah, and folks, we've all heard the anecdotal stories, caller and ladies and gentlemen, about the martial law signs, and I mean everything from body bags to martial law signs to you name it. You've heard about it, but this one I've got to say that based on our direct conversation with this woman, this although this was a friend of a friend, so to speak. Okay, that's how it's termed on the internet. The level of specificity as well as the knowledge of the people involved. I'll just leave it at that. The timing and everything combined certainly had the ring of truth to it. Short of actually producing a photograph, I would have to say that this is perhaps one of the most reliable descriptions of an incident that my question to her though was, well, did the truck driver, who was this truck driver, and did the truck driver know, and did the truck driver, where was the destination and origin and so on and so forth? Those details were not available, but nonetheless, the observations were to me valid. Now, maybe I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, interesting story, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And what I also think is that when I met the lady, you could tell she was a woman of God, and that she didn't seem like the type of person to embellish about something like that. And I don't think you come to a wonderful weekend like we had in Telltales, And we were no, and so we all believed her too. And I'll tell you something else. Here in Columbus, Ohio, off of a road called Trayview Road, and you can Google this. There's a FEMA camp, and actually, when you Google FEMA camps in Columbus, Ohio, and it comes up, there's two journalists that thought everybody was conservative conspiracy theorists. So he got a buddy and he took a camera, and you can read all about it on the internet. And he drove over there, and he was taking pictures and filming, and there's pictures actually on the internet with this. But he said that there is a train, just like the T.D. Hale prophecy that was given to Rick Wiles that he talked about again yesterday, and it was October 22nd and 23rd on Rick Wiles. But he talked about the train tracks that are going into these FEMA camps that look like concentration camps, that they have once been military bases turned some sort of a camp. Well, when you look this up, you are going to actually be able to see the high fence, the barbed wire, their color-coded entrances where the trains come through. And this journalist, if you go on there and read about his experience and look at his pictures, he said that they were followed, that there were actually people there working, that it was basically even some construction going on. So something is going on, and it was like some of the prophecy teachers said over the weekend, isn't it nice to be in a room full of people that the Holy Spirit's speaking to, and we all know we're all not crazy. This stuff is really happening.
Yeah, very well said. And I look at various websites who that say, well, this is all conspiracy nonsense. But if you look, for example, in Lima, Ohio, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, especially Columbus, you will find that there are FEMA detention facilities, or at least federally owned facilities that have the fencing, the barbed wire, the housing already built. And I'm familiar with the one in Columbus, Ohio, that's near.
Oh, yes.
So I'm very familiar with this. And people have to, I think people have to wake up and understand that they're out there. But go ahead.
They were staffed. He said they were staffed, and they followed him. You can read the story. Anybody with a computer can go online and read about it. But he said that they followed him in a black SUV until they really felt that, you know, they were honestly leaving and they weren't a threat. But I got to tell you, one day my sister and I were in shock because we were listening to Rush Limbaugh, and he said someone had called in about a FEMA camp, and he said, "What is a FEMA camp?" Well, it was as much as, we think he's one of the smartest men, most observant, and I'm telling you, we know he has a real take on what's going on in this country, and he is actually stepping up and saying that we are in jeopardy. So, but we were all beside ourselves that he did not know what a FEMA camp was.
Well, I wonder sometimes when you get people like Limbaugh or Hannity or any of the other mainstream media, and even to some extent Glenn Beck, who openly mock even the prospect of these federal detention centers owned or operated under the auspices of FEMA. I mean, look, Camp Perry, for example, in Ohio, has been renovated. It was once used as a POW camp to house German and Italian prisoners of war back in the World War II days. If you look at that Camp Perry now, you're going to see this renovation of the housing, the once tar paper covered huts that were built for housing prisoners. They're still standing, but recent construction of 200-man, 300-man barracks have replaced most of these huts. Now,
where is this one?
Well, just as one example, Camp Perry.
Oh,
Camp
okay.
Perry.
Okay. Camp Perry. Okay.
Okay, and then you've got another facility located around the old stone quarry near Interstate 75 outside of Columbus, which I believe you're talking about, which has railroad access to the property and fences. These are, I mean, no secret. Yeah, no, I mean, these are not. They're not making any attempts to hide these. And Jesse Ventura, of course, had done one of his shows on this, and it's amazing how many people say, well, it's to house displaced citizens or immigrants, and the outward open denial of this. Now, again, I don't want to sound like I'm saying things without proof. I mean, there's ample proof out there. And Joe and I, in Buffalo, we looked at a very curious housing or a very curious building arrangement close to some railroad tracks. So, you're absolutely correct. I mean, so from the martial law signs to potential FEMA camps, what are we looking at here? And of course, go back to Grant Jeffries. What he his research and writings and stuff. So,
Well, we just pray for you, and we pray for Joe. I love it when Joe tells about Scripture, and I really am so touched by that. And we're all praying for all of us and all of you, and we just ask that God guides us and directs us in the way we should go. And we feel like we tell people all the time, hey, it's close. Everybody needs to get in touch with God and prepare. So anyway,
thank you so much, and you're right on.
And by the way, it was such a pleasure meeting you in person. It really was. I know I can in my mind, you're standing right in the front row there, and we were all together, and what a lovely group of people. I was going to say women, but people that you are. So thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much for your kindness, and thank you for the candy too.
Oh yes, well, thank you too. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
God bless you too. All right, that was a great call. Number of great callers tonight. We are at the last minute of the show now, so we're not going to have time for any more calls. But I just want to say, the next few weeks we do have L.A. Marzulli planned, Tom Breuer, Steve Quayle on Monday.
We'll say Ted Breuer.
Sorry. Steve Quayle with David Morgan from silverinvestor.com. Andy Hoffman on Tuesday, first hour, with Stan Dalen coming out in the second hour. We got some good stuff lined up for you. Sheila does too tomorrow night, and we hope to see all you here then and next week.
Yeah, and folks, watch the website. I've got some things that I'm planning on releasing here. It's been slow going, but thank you for your patience. But I've got both Joe and I we're doing some research. Joe has found really the mother lode of information about what's coming, I believe. So he's done a great job. Yeah, some stuff indeed. But folks, I just want to thank each and every one of you for standing by us, standing with us, standing next to us, being part of our extended family. You don't know how much all of you mean to us, and we're praying for you, each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank God for all of you. With that,
have a great night.
Yeah, please stay safe.